Before we get to the content, I have two huge announcements. The first has to do with giving away a PlayStation 5 to anyone that's subscribed and turned on my notifications. Whether you're old or new, if you subscribed and hit that bell, then there's a chance that you can win a PlayStation 5. In addition to that, guys, check this out. To celebrate our 100,000 subscriber achievement, we officially dropped limited edition 100,000 subscriber merch on Mikerophone.org. This is really phenomenal, man, because we're only going to have this merch available for about a week, and it's the best way to say that you are a day one subscriber to own a piece of 100,000 subscriber merch. And if you do happen to cop any of the merch, send me a tweet on Twitter, man, so I can throw you a follow or retweet it. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Guys, the Atlanta Falcons have been an absolute roller coaster of an NFL team this year, starting 0-5 to start out the season, and then eventually winning their very first game after firing their head coach Dan Quinn in a 40-23 victory over a team that is also being coached by a head coach that is on the hot seat in Mike Zimmer in the Minnesota Vikings. And everyone was really hyped because finally the Atlanta Falcons were able to win a game. Matt Ryan even came out to say, it shows what we're capable of doing. We just have to find a way to be at that level week in and week out. But here's the thing. The Atlanta Falcons are currently 1-5. Typically, whenever you have an interim head coach, you don't really make it that far in the NFL. As a matter of fact, if the NFL season were to end today, the Atlanta Falcons would be in prime position to have a top 5 NFL draft pick. Now, I have this theory. We call it the microphone theory on this channel, and you can let me know in the comment section whether you believe in it or not. But my theory is, whenever a new head coach comes in to a brand new team and there is any excuse whatsoever to get rid of that team's quarterback and start out with your own quarterback, that head coach is going to jump on the opportunity to do so. The first thing is Julio Jones is on a 3-year, $66 million contract. He's 31 years old currently. That contract is going to go on until the 2024 NFL season, so he's not going to be a free agent until 2024. Matt Ryan, on the other hand, doesn't have the most beautiful contract himself. You see, next year he's set to make $23 million. The year after he's set to make $16.2 million, and in 2023 he's set to make $20.5 million. In 2024 his contract expires. And I can't help but feel like the Atlanta Falcons would jump all over on the opportunity to start over with a brand new quarterback and a brand new head coach this coming offseason. And it makes a lot of sense because especially after the monster game Julio Jones had this past weekend against a team that, for the most part, is one of the worst defenses in the NFL in the Minnesota Vikings, I can't help but feel like the Atlanta Falcons have a phenomenal opportunity to potentially sell high on Julio Jones and move on from Matt Ryan to continue their quest to tank. Now, I feel like Julio Jones is more likely to be a mid-season trade, whereas I feel as though Matt Ryan is more likely to be an off-season trade. And unloading both of those huge contracts would be very instrumental to a rebuild for the Atlanta Falcons because, again, they also do have a very good wide receiver core with Russell Gage and Calvin Ridley. And as a matter of fact, those two were doing work even when Julio Jones wasn't performing up to par. Through 6 games so far, Calvin Ridley has 546 receiving yards. Could you wrap your head around that for a second? 546 receiving yards. He can nearly scratch the surface of a 1,600-yard receiving season to go along with 5 touchdowns in only 57 targets. He has a 61.4% catch rating, and he has a 9.6 yards per target average. On top of that, he's dirt cheap and he's only 26 years old, and Julio Jones isn't giving the Atlanta Falcons the return that they need on their investment. As for Matt Ryan, I think Matt Ryan's a remarkable quarterback. As a matter of fact, I think you could win a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan under center. But the problem is the Atlanta Falcons aren't supporting Matt Ryan the way they need to on the defensive end. And ever since they made it to the Super Bowl and lost 28-3, we've been seeing more of the same, and it's very frustrating because I feel like some team needs to trade for Matt Ryan and squeeze that last bit of juice out of him to potentially get him his elusive Super Bowl ring. Now, the top teams that come to my mind when it comes to trading for Matt Ryan And I think the number one team that needs to trade for Matt Ryan is the Indianapolis Colts. And I understand they already have Phillip Rivers under contract, who is a disgusting contract in its own right. Like a 2-year, $40 million contract. Are you kidding, Indy? Like, I could have told you that was a horrible contract this past offseason. He looked horrible in Los Angeles last year. But in addition to that, if you think that's hilarious, they have the most expensive backup quarterback in the NFL as well in Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett's making $16 million this year. So I guess you could potentially cross them out as a contender for potentially bringing in Matt Ryan as well. Although I feel like that's a perfect fit schematically with Frank Reich's system and a solid running game to support Matt Ryan. You hate to see the fact that they wouldn't be able to pull it off. As for Julio Jones, I'm seeing a decent amount of suitors pop up for him. Now, the first team that always pops up in wide receiver trade rumors is the New England Patriots. The Patriots definitely need an upgrade at wide receiver because all Cam Newton really has is Julian Edelman, who is getting up there in age, who is currently the team's leading pass catcher with 20 receptions. He also leads the NFL in drops, by the way, and he's been fairly inconsistent after Tom Brady's left as a free agent. I'm sure if the Patriots were willing to take on Julio Jones' contract, they could give up 2019 first-round pick that was drafted over DK Metcalf, N'Keal Harry, who hasn't been doing super well in New England so far. But the Falcons could then pair Harry up with Calvin Ridley. Maybe a change of scenery would do well for him. Another team that pops up to mind is the Las Vegas Raiders. And the reason why is because John Gruden absolutely loves big-name wide receivers. He really did his best in bringing along Antonio Brown. That didn't end up panning out. The Raiders did start out very well so far this season, like better than I thought. Whoever thought that they would beat the Kansas City Chiefs? And Julio Jones to Las Vegas could be the target that Derek Carr is needed to stop checking the ball down so damn much. Another team that pops into mind, which would be absolutely remarkable, is the Tennessee Titans. And believe it or not, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Titans are 5-0 on the season. How the hell did that happen? I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that Ryan Tannehill is completing 70% of his passes for 1,368 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. But if you don't think that's plausible, the Falcons could trade Julio Jones to the Seattle Seahawks to make a terrifying combination with DK Metcalf. The issue is that Seattle just dealt away multiple first-round picks for Jamal Adams, so it might not happen because the Seahawks don't really have that many assets. And finally, probably my favorite option on this entire list that I could see happening, and just probably the most realistic option on my entire list, is the Miami Dolphins. And the reason why is whenever you want to acquire a big contract wide receiver, one of the boxes that you need to check off is whether your quarterback is making an obscene amount of money or not. And luckily for the Miami Dolphins, they just named Tua Tagovailoa their starting quarterback. So if you get him Julio Jones, and next to Julio Jones is Devontae Parker, you have a pretty decent wide receiver core for Tua to play with and for Tua to grow with. And honestly, I feel like it's probably the most plausible situation because the Miami Dolphins have a ton of assets. They have 2 first-round picks this year. Now, I don't think Julio Jones is worthy of a first-round pick, with all due respect. He's 31 years old. I don't really know what return you could get for him, but I think this is just the change of scenery that Julio Jones needs. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think and where you think Julio Jones will go? Do you even think this rumor makes sense? Should the Atlanta Falcons just hold on to Julio, even though he had a slow start? After all, he was injured to begin with. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.